Pixel 8 Pro, the comeback kid for Google. It's meant to perfect what Google set out to create, beginning with the Pixel 6 Pro, balancing Google's unique and honestly brilliant feature set with an increase in efficiency with Google's in-house Tensor chip. My experience with the Pixel 8 Pro has been great, and it's certainly not a bad phone by any stretch of the imagination. Although there is a question that sits in the back of my mind the more I use it. With the improvements made from the Pixel 7 to the 8, was it enough to justify the price increase that came along with it? Smartphones are getting more and more expensive, and upgrading even 2 years out from the last device can sometimes be not as game-changing as it used to be. So I'm gonna try and answer that question as best as I can. So without wasting too much time, let's talk a little bit about the basics. Let's start with the price. Just get the bad news out of the way now. The Pixel 8 got a price increase of $100, moving it from $599 to $699 at the base storage of 128 gigabytes and $759 for the 256. The Pixel 8 Pro got a price increase of $100 more to $999 for the 128 and above $1,000 for the 256 and the 512. This really isn't an issue for me necessarily with the phone per se, but now that the price is starting to align more with phones like the Galaxy, I'm going to begin to start expecting a little bit more and be a lot less forgiving on certain things, but some more on that later. Aside from that, the Pixel 8 Pro got a pretty decent design change, or rather taking it a little bit of a step backwards with the screen going back to being flat. No more curved edges, no slightly tapered off sides of the screen, just flat. It's the first thing you notice from the 7 Pro, and it's a great design choice. I still do experience some accidental touches from the size of the display from time to time, so I really don't think anything changed on that front for me, but now that we have a tad bit more screen area to mess around with, it just feels better. This phone feels really great to hold, and the screen is just gorgeous. Starting with its comfortability. It doesn't really dig into your palms, even with the flatter display. I never have any problems with one-handed operation either, like I sometimes do with my S23 Ultra, and just using my thumb to navigate. I also don't feel like it slips out of my hands like the 7 Pro would, thanks to that frosted glass. And as far as the screen is concerned, it's bright and colorful. A very big upgrade on the brightness front, especially from a readability aspect. In direct sunlight, it can get up to 1600 nits, and at 2400 nits at peak brightness. This goes a really long way with viewing HDR videos, and it's a big jump from the 7 Pro, and something you notice the first time you take it out on a sunny day. The speakers also got an upgrade as well, with a louder, much fuller sound. It hasn't been too good since the 6 Pro, so it's welcome, even though I really don't play music or videos out loud through my phone speakers really all that much. You also have 12 gigabytes of RAM here on the 8 Pro, as well as the new Tensor G3 powering the internals, but like I said earlier, more on that later. The Pixel launcher still is the cleanest Android launcher to date, and of course it's because it's made by Google. What comes along with that is many of Google's unique features available first and only on Pixel devices. Features like screen calling, where you can have the assistant pretty much answer any phone call for you, which is especially helpful for spam calls, or even Direct My Call, which will pull up a visual menu and transcription to make it easier to navigate through customer service centers, which is also good for accessibility. Or, one of my personal favorites, quick phrases. Answering and declining calls with my voice is extremely helpful when I'm busy doing something else and I can't be bothered to reach for my phone. Answering. Although these are some features that are available on previous Pixel devices, with the 8 Pro, there are some newer features as well. If you need a little bit of customization, you can now create AI generated wallpapers, and they look kind of nice. There's a good variety, and you can pick and choose how you want your backgrounds to look by changing different phrases. Lock screen style changes also came with Android 14. Not anything life-changing, but it's great that Google is starting to move away from completely basic interface, especially for those that don't feel like spending time customizing with something like Nova Launcher. Also, Face Unlock now works for any apps that use biometrics, which is a really great change. The front-facing camera is still the same, but Google still found a way to enhance the security of it so Face Unlock could become usable for things like banking apps, which is cool. Doesn't work much in the dark still, but during the day you should still be fine. All these features are powered by the Tensor G3 this time around, and it helps the Pixel shine software-wise in a lot of ways. The cameras on the Pixel are one of the reasons for its popularity, and it's mostly because they're really good for a smartphone. And that doesn't really change here on the 8 Pro. You have two 48 megapixel lenses here in the telephoto and the ultra wide angle. Then last but not least, the 50 megapixel wide angle lens. You can take some really fantastic shots, whether you're using the wide angle lens or you're using the digital zoom with the telephoto at 30x. There are some patches of visible noise, mostly on some of the pictures and video that I took with the telephoto lens. But other than that, photos here look a bit more natural in tone and color, a little dissimilar to what you would see on something like the Galaxy S23 Ultra with its more vivid look. There's also a bit more detail as well in specific spots too. As I always say, photos can sometimes be subjective, so I threw a few shots up there for you all to look at and judge for yourselves. I take my fair share of photos, but what I'm most interested in on my phone is video. And with the newly added video boost, I thought it would be a good time to see what it's actually capable of. Video quality is better from the 7 Pro, but for me, not by much. The 7 Pro's video quality was already good, especially when recording at 10-bit HDR at 4K 30, and the same can be said here on the 8 Pro as well. Even recording at 4K 60, videos are smooth, and when taking it without a tripod and just using my hands, the stabilization is great as well. And now for Video Boost. You turn Video Boost on in the camera settings, start shooting some video with it, and it keeps an original 1080p version, but also uploads and processes another copy with the better quality in 4K. The results actually do look good, and it's definitely brighter and better detailed, while smoothing out my hand movements in the process. But in some areas, it can kind of seem a little overexposed, especially when it processes the HDR in a really bright setting like I was in on this specific day. It's a good feature that I can see myself using in some situations, but I think the onboard 10-bit HDR has pretty similar results without all the extra time taking to process. The 8 Pro actually has a lot going for it in the way it operates. Coming from the 7 Pro, there's a lot of good changes in efficiency and the way it handles heat. An area that was a big sticking point for a lot of its criticisms of its predecessor. On the 8 Pro, I barely feel it heat up at all. Probably only when I'm playing a demanding game or of course shooting 4K video, but never on casual browsing. Power-wise, the Tensor has never really amounted to much, but it works well for what it can accomplish. Google never intended to make the Tensor built on raw power, but instead focuses its efforts on powering the Google Assistant and some of its other features, which it does extremely well, with the speed to browse my entire phone with using just the Assistant, along with speedy voice typing as well. You know, over the last 3 years, I've never really had a problem with any of the Pixel's performance from the 6 to the 8 Pro. Maybe some heat issues and a few bugs, particularly on the 6, but never any stuttering or lag browsing around the phone. Now, the same can't be said about more intensive tasks. For me, that would be running any games. The Pixel does decent, but it still hovers around that 40 to 50 mark, constantly dropping into the 30s and even the 20s at times, with temps moving into the 70-degree mark or even the 80s at certain points as well. These are all at the highest graphics settings. Luckily, the phone, as I mentioned earlier, didn't feel too hot even during those phases, so that's definitely an improvement from the 7 Pro, but that's still not very good. You can just imagine the toll it would take on the battery life in the middle of the day. Going back to when I mentioned the price at the beginning of the video, for a phone that is well over $1,000, I'm starting to expect a little bit more here. I repeat, it's not terrible by any means, it's only that when I pay this higher premium, I expect premium specs to come along with it. Somewhere close enough to other devices in this price range. Its direct competition, the Galaxy S23 Ultra, does remarkably better here, staying consistently at 60 FPS with much less frequent drops, and in most cases it's non-existent, and the temps stay practically around the low to mid 50-degree mark. Now of course, this won't really mean much to you if you don't game on your phone often, so if that's the case, feel free to ignore all that and pay attention to everything before I start talking about the intensive task. Unfortunately, some of those thoughts also apply to the battery as well. When I ended up getting the Pixel 8 Pro, I expected some battery improvements with the new Tensor, similar to the fantastic changes with how it handles heat. Now, I'm not here to say the battery has no improvements, it's just that these past couple of months, I went from, okay, this actually lasts an hour or two longer, to this feels exactly the same as last year with the Pixel 7 Pro. For my use case, the battery hasn't really changed all that much. To be honest, I get about an hour or less longer. I wake up at 7 a.m., take my phone out of the charger, do my morning routine, and 2 hours later, my phone is at 84%. And another 2 hours, it's at 60%. When I thought about it a bit more, it started to track with something familiar, exactly like my 7 Pro. And what do you know, by 4 p.m., I'm at around 30%, about 10% more than where my Pixel 7 Pro would consistently land. Better, but not something I felt all that much. With this kind of screen on time, as I've said before, it's good and definitely okay enough for most people, and for me as well. Although my issues with it arise when we start comparing it to other phones in its price range. Again, that's when things start to get a bit tricky. With the recent price increase, I don't think that the battery life checks out with how much the phone costs now, especially when the bar has been set by other manufacturers. My experience with the Galaxy S23 Ultra spoiled me just a little bit. When the price was lower, I was more willing to give it a pass. I could excuse it if it fell just a bit short of something like the S23, but it falls behind somewhat, and that includes standby time as well. I'm not saying the Pixel 8 Pro's battery is bad, because it's not. It tracks with an all-day battery and, in the very rare occasion, into the next day. I'm only saying with a price increase, I'm expecting to see improvements here, and unfortunately for me, it was there, but somewhat modest at best. Despite some of its shortcomings in some areas, in my opinion, the Pixel 8 Pro still shines, and it's a step forward for Google for sure. Pixels will remain my favorite devices, and that doesn't really change with the Pixel 8 Pro. There are a lot of features here that really make my life easier. It's all the little things that combine to create an extremely fun and intuitive experience when I'm using my phone. Although, just because it's my favorite doesn't mean I can completely excuse some of its faults. I really do wish there was more power here, especially for the amount of money they're asking for. The S23 Ultra manages power and efficiency to a T, and it extends all the way to the battery as well, lasting some hours longer than my Pixel 8 Pro could in my experience. The Tensor is a less powerful chip, but somehow still draws more power than the Gen 2, with almost the exact same battery capacity. I think Google's software with the Pixel launcher is top class for an Android phone, but that hardware just can't seem to keep up. I struggle to see how I can tell someone to pick the Pixel over the S23 Ultra, especially now that they are priced in a similar range. With the prices of phones rising higher and higher, what you're getting with it becomes more and more important, especially because people spend so much on them. And at this price range, I can't really blame anyone for nitpicking at all. I feel like these two areas, power and battery, hold it back for some people, and it holds me back from wanting to keep using it as my daily, which actually isn't what I wanted to happen. Now, Google tends to have a bunch of sales, so if you could find this phone for slightly below that original asking price, I think you don't really have to look further for one of the better pure Android experiences around. It's almost a no-brainer. You get updates for 7 years, new features at a steady pace, and a good all-rounder of a phone. $100 to $200 is a big difference, and I think it gets increasingly harder to overlook the specs the higher you go. So, what do you think about the Pixel 8 Pro? And if you have it, how's your experience been? Make sure to comment below. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you like this video. And with all that being said, I'll see you on the next one.